Before we start, please support the channel, hit like, and subscribe. You really brought me here to show me this. Vanessa's voice cut through the stillness of the empty foyer like a knife through velvet. I turned from the open staircase, still admiring the vaulted ceilings. It's a brand new build, Van. Everything custom. You said you wanted light, space. She cut me off, already walking toward the kitchen with a critical sweep of her eyes. Yeah, and Marcy's place has 3 dishwashers and actual marble, not this quartz crap. Honestly, Adam, do you even know what I like? I paused, letting the sting of her words settle just enough. Funny, last time I checked, Marcy was still bailing water out of her dining room ceiling. She turned on a heel, glaring. Oh my God, are you really bringing that up? You're always in competition with women. It's pathetic. No, I said coolly, adjusting my watch. I just like facts. Leaky ceilings are facts. Her laugh was short, hard. You're so insecure it's exhausting. The walls were still white, but the air between us was gray. I watched her move from room to room, heels echoing against the fresh hardwood floors, finding something wrong with everything. Ceiling too low, fridge too small, backyard barely fit for a brunch. She stopped near the sliding glass doors, arms crossed. You think just because you buy a house, that makes everything better? That makes me happy. I exhaled slowly. I thought it might be a step forward. A fresh start. She rolled her eyes and looked out at the manicured lawn like it offended her. Marcy's husband bought her a vacation property in Aspen. This feels like a starter home. I said nothing, just stood there in the middle of the kitchen, hands in my pockets, watching her pull farther away with every word. It was a familiar distance, her measuring tape of disappointment. And I'd spent too many years shrinking to fit her expectations. She turned, her tone sharp. You hate that she has things I want. Admit it. Maybe, I said simply. I just hate that you want what she has more than what we could build. That stopped her for a second. Only a second. She grabbed her purse from the counter. This was a waste of my time. She stormed past me without looking back, perfume trailing behind her like smoke. I stayed behind. No words. No chase. Just silence. And a plan forming quietly in the background. I'm Adam Linton. I run a distribution firm out of Irvine. Nothing flashy, but solid. I've built everything I have from the ground up. No handouts, no shortcuts. Just long hours, clean numbers, and keeping my word. And up until recently, I thought those same rules applied at home. But marriage doesn't work like business. It doesn't reward consistency. Especially not when your wife's loyalty belongs to a lifestyle, not a person. And after that house tour, something clicked. Something final. She thought she was the only one who could play the game. She had no idea what I'd already started planning. Brian leaned back in the booth, swirling the last of his bourbon like he had all the time in the world. So let me get this straight, he said, raising a brow. You spent how much on that tour? I took a long sip of my iced tea, not quite ready to admit the number out loud. Enough. He let out a low whistle. And she trashed the place before dessert? She said it was starter home energy. Compared it to Marcy's again. Everything's Marcy this, Marcy that. I paused. I wanted it to be a surprise. Brian didn't say anything right away. He just looked at me. Really looked. Same way he used to back in our dorm days when I talked myself into staying with the wrong girl for the wrong reasons. Finally, he leaned forward, voice quiet. Honestly, man, your marriage doesn't sound very safe. I blinked. Come again? He gestured toward the steak on my plate I hadn't touched. Look at you. You're one of the sharpest people I know, but when it comes to her, you're flinching like someone waiting to get hit again. With words, maybe, but still hit. I didn't respond. Not right away. Because deep down, I knew he wasn't wrong. The restaurant hummed around us. Low conversations, clinking glasses, soft jazz piping through overhead speakers. It should have felt like a break from the tension, a night off. But I couldn't relax. Not really. She wasn't always like this, I said. But even as the words left my mouth, I wasn't sure I believed them. It's just pressure. She wants to feel like she's winning. And she thinks I'm not dreaming big enough. Brian raised a skeptical brow. You run a multi-million-dollar logistics firm. You live in Orange County. You're not exactly scraping change for gas, Adam. She wants Aspen. And boats. She wants to be envied. He shook his head. No, she wants leverage. There's a difference. That made me stop. Brian went on, slower this time. Look, I'm not telling you to burn it all down. But if she's making moves like you're just a passenger, you need to protect yourself before she sees the end game and makes the first strike. I rubbed my jaw. You think I should prepare for divorce? I think, he said, leaning back again, you should separate your house from your marriage. Just in case. You've worked too hard to hand it over in a tantrum settlement. There was a long pause. I stared at the flickering candle between us, then looked up. And how would I do that? Brian's mouth twitched. Set up a trust. Name someone you trust outside the marriage. Keep the property separate. You'd still control it, but she couldn't touch it in a split. I leaned back slowly. That's cold. No, Adam. It's business. And you of all people understand business. I didn't speak for a moment. Just let his words sink in. Outside, I could see the city lights blinking through the restaurant's large windows. Orange County's glow looking soft and expensive. Inside, something inside me was hardening. Quietly, irrevocably. I thought the house would bring us closer, I murmured. Brian's tone softened, but not by much. You thought wrong. Now fix it before she does something that costs you everything. I nodded once. You know a guy? He reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a card, and slid it across the table like a dealer handing me an ace. This guy helped my brother-in-law keep his lake house in the divorce. Clean, tight paperwork. No loose ends. I took the card, turned it over in my hand. Brian watched me for a long second, then said, You don't have to tell her. Not until it matters. I exhaled, nodded slowly. All right. He raised his glass. To clarity. I didn't raise mine, but I did smile just barely. And somewhere behind that small, measured smile, something finally clicked into place. The view from the 19th floor was nothing but glass and cloudless sky. Orange County stretched out in calm perfection. Sun-washed rooftops, palm trees lining the boulevards, pools sparkling like sapphires below. But inside the office, everything felt cold. So, the attorney said, folding his hands over a leather folder, here's how it works. The house isn't in your name directly. It's held in a trust. You're still the one paying the mortgage. You manage the property, but legally, he glanced up. It belongs to your trustee. I nodded slowly. And that keeps it out of marital division if things go south? Correct. It's not community property. So if your wife tries to make a claim during divorce proceedings, there's nothing to split. It's not yours. Not on paper. He slid a packet of documents across the polished desk. You'll need someone you trust. Family's usually the cleanest route. I stared down at the packet. My name. The property's address. The trust title, blank. Then one name floated to the surface of my mind like a leaf on still water. Kayla, my younger sister. A sculptor. Independent, sharp, and the only person I knew who'd never once asked me for anything but honesty. Kayla, I said, more to myself than him. The lawyer smiled. Good choice. She's not married, right? Nope. Lives in a studio downtown. Barely pays attention to money. He chuckled. Perfect trustee. I signed the forms without hesitation. My pen didn't stutter once. Kayla's art studio smelled like turpentine, clay dust, and the faintest hint of ginger tea. Sunlight poured through the oversized windows, splashing across her workbench and the half-finished bronze figure she was smoothing with a chisel. She looked up when I walked in. You look like someone who's about to ask a favor, she said, brushing a strand of red hair from her forehead. I held up a paper bag. Brought you almond croissants. She took the bag, peeked inside, then squinted at me. You're definitely about to ask a favor. I sat on the edge of a stool and handed her the trust papers. I need you to hold a house. On paper, at least. She took them, scanned the top line, and raised an eyebrow. Trustee, it's a legal formality, I said quickly. The house would be under your name, but I'd handle everything. Payments, taxes. I just need it shielded. Her face shifted. Not suspicion, just concern. This have to do with Vanessa? I hesitated. Yes, but not in the way you think. She poured hot tea into 2 chipped mugs. How should I think then? I took the mug she offered and stared into the steam. It's a safeguard. She's been unpredictable lately. Kayla sat down across from me, elbows on the table, voice quiet. Adam, if you're doing this, it's not just about unpredictable. It's about you expecting impact. What are you not saying? I looked her in the eyes. Calm. Steady. Like nothing was burning beneath the surface. I'm not planning to leave her, I said. But I need to be ready if she makes a move. That house, it matters. Not because it's big or expensive, but because I chose it. For us. And I don't want it used as leverage later. She sipped her tea. She wouldn't do that. She already makes it clear she thinks I owe her more than I give. Silence stretched between us. Kayla folded the papers slowly. I'll do it, she said, then paused. But if this gets ugly, I'm pulling the plug. I won't be used to hurt someone. You won't be, I said. This is about balance, not revenge. She nodded, but her eyes were searching me again. Promise me something. What? If you ever decide to leave, don't use me as a weapon. Use this only to protect what's yours, not punish what isn't. I held her gaze. I promise. She didn't smile, but she did slide the paperwork into her drawer, sealing our silent contract. Outside, the city shimmered. Inside, I took a sip of tea that had gone lukewarm in my hands and pretended it didn't taste like doubt. Tata, I said, holding the keys out like I was unveiling a prize on a game show. Welcome to your new kingdom. Vanessa took the keys from my hand slowly, glancing up at the house like it was a mildly disappointing gift basket. It looked smaller in daylight. I let out a soft chuckle. 4 bedrooms, open-plan kitchen, vaulted ceilings, and a walk-in closet that could host a podcast. What part of this is small? She stepped through the door without answering, her heels clicking across the polished floor like disapproval had a sound. I followed her through the entryway as she swept past the living room, gave a once-over to the fireplace, then muttered, tiles not marble. Sure, I replied, cool as a lake at dawn. But unlike Marcy's, these floors don't have water stains. That earned me a glare. You still obsessed with her house? No, I said, slipping my hands in my pockets. Just not interested in playing house with a woman who thinks everything I give her is second place. She kept walking. Through the kitchen, into the dining area. She pulled open the sliding door to the patio and made a noise in her throat. The grass is dead. Why would you surprise me with something half done? Because, I said, following her gaze, some things take work. And I thought you might like building something together. She spun around. Work? Is that your way of telling me you expect me to maintain this place? I leaned against the counter, arms folded. I expect partnership, Vanessa, not royalty. Oh, here we go. She dropped her bag on the kitchen island like she was planting a flag. So now you want me to scrub floors and cook casseroles like some 1950s housewife? I kept my tone even. I bring in the income. I cover the costs. And I don't expect casseroles. I expect respect. She crossed her arms. So what? I'm supposed to thank you for doing what a husband's supposed to do. I took a breath. What you're supposed to do is stop treating every gesture like a battle. Is that what this house is? She snapped. A gesture? You bought it just to win? No, I said calmly. I bought it because I thought we could start over. But I'm realizing you don't want a marriage, you want a competition. And I'm not playing anymore. She blinked. Once. Twice. Then her voice rose like a siren. Unbelievable. I'm standing here in a house I didn't ask for, being told I should be grateful for your control issues? No, I said, steady as ever. You're being told, clearly, this is the line. You want to live here? Then be a wife. Or walk. Silence followed. The kind that wasn't shocked so much as measured. Her eyes narrowed. She turned without another word, grabbed her bag again, and walked past me, straight toward the stairs. No stomping. No slamming. Just that quiet, deliberate pace. I waited at the bottom, watching. She reached the top landing and paused. Looked over her shoulder. For a second, I thought she might throw one last jab. But instead, she simply said, I'm not unpacking for you. Then disappeared down the hall. I didn't follow. Didn't need to. Because silence says more than a tantrum ever could. And in that silence, I heard it clearly. She didn't respect me yet. But she'd just realized, for the first time, I wasn't afraid to lose her. Click, click, clunk. I twisted the key again, slower this time, like maybe I'd imagined it. But the deadbolt didn't budge. My front door, our front door, sat there smugly unyielding, warm sunlight draping across the porch like it had nothing to do with the storm brewing in my chest. I stepped back, eyeing the doorframe, then glanced at the key in my hand. Same one I used yesterday. The same lock I'd opened without a second thought. Above me, a second-floor window creaked open. And there she was. Vanessa, framed by white trim and pettiness, in a silk robe like she was starring in a soap opera. Her voice was sugar-coated venom. Oh, did you forget something? She called down. tilting her head with exaggerated sympathy. Because the locks don't work for strangers anymore. I stared up at her, my mouth set in a firm line. You changed the locks? She smirked. I changed the locks. You don't get to walk in and out like this is your kingdom after yesterday's little performance. I live here. She shrugged. So apologize. Or leave. The neighborhood was too quiet. A bird chirped somewhere distantly, like it had no idea someone had just lit a match in the middle of my front yard. I didn't move, didn't raise my voice, just stood there, letting her hang in her own theatrics. Then I heard a voice behind me. Trouble in paradise already? I turned. The woman leaning against the porch railing of the house next door looked like she belonged in a music video. Sleek black hair, aviator sunglasses, effortless confidence. She was holding a watering can in one hand and sipping iced coffee with the other. Barefoot, unbothered. Lexi, she said, offering a slow smile. I'm your neighbor. Been watching y'all move in like it's a reality show. I cleared my throat, straightened my posture. I'm Adam. I figured, she said, nodding toward Vanessa's window. She doesn't strike me as the share the spotlight type. From above, Vanessa's voice tightened. Excuse me, this is a private matter. Lexi didn't even glance up. Really? Because locking someone out of their own house feels pretty public from where I'm standing. I raised an eyebrow, half grateful, half amused. Vanessa crossed her arms. You can stay out of it, Lexi. Lexi took another sip. And you can stop acting like this is Bravo's Sunday special. Grow up. Vanessa gasped, an actual gasp. Lexi turned to me. You need a place to crash? Spare room's empty. You look like a man who needs a reset, and maybe a bourbon. I didn't hesitate. Thanks, I said calmly. I'd appreciate that. Vanessa's face drained. She leaned out the window, voice sharp. You're seriously going with her? I looked up at her, my tone ice cool. You locked me out. This is me. Leaving. Then I turned to Lexi, who smirked and led the way down her front steps, barefoot, bold, and completely unbothered by the woman throwing daggers from 2 stories above. As I followed her, I didn't look back. Because I didn't need to see Vanessa's expression to know I'd just tilted the scales. I could feel it. The night air was thick with jasmine and just quiet enough to hear the sound of sprinklers 2 houses down. Lexi and I had sat on her back porch for hours, talking about everything but the elephant in my marriage. California zoning laws, urban preferences, how she used to work in film before deciding people were too dramatic to film. Wasn't expecting you to actually take me up on the spare room, she said as I stood to stretch. I wasn't expecting to get locked out of my own house. She grinned, but it was soft. Understanding. You're handling this. Cool. I don't yell, I said simply. I calculate. She murmured, then handed me a pillow. Doors unlocked. Use what you need. Just don't snore. I was halfway across her front yard, pillow tucked under one arm, when I saw it. A black SUV parked in my driveway. Still running. I stopped in the grass, instincts going sharp. Vanessa didn't have an SUV, and none of our friends drove anything like this. Not at 1 in the morning. Not idling like it had somewhere to be, but nowhere safe to go. I crossed the yard fast. Lights were off inside the house, but the side door was open, the one leading into the laundry room. I didn't knock. I entered. The air inside was warm, humid, filled with some mix of cologne and lavender detergent. I moved through the hallway quietly until I reached the edge of the living room. And there he was, half-dressed, athletic build, standing by the mantel, fidgeting with his shirt. His eyes met mine, and I didn't say a word. Not yet. He looked like a deer in headlights. Vanessa came stumbling out from the hall, barefoot and wrapped in a silk robe. Adam, what the hell are you doing in here? I live here, I said evenly. You don't anymore. I told you, I called the police. The guy moved toward the door. Don't, I said sharply. He froze. I stepped farther into the room, calm as a chess player. Who are you? The man hesitated, then muttered. Look, man, I didn't know she was living with her husband. I cut in. Yeah, seems to be a recurring surprise around here. Adam, stop. Vanessa's voice climbed a note too high. This is my house now. No, I said. This is a trust-owned property, and I'm still a legal resident. Sirens echoed in the distance. The guy looked at her, then at me, then back at the open door. Don't be here when they arrive, I said, eyes locked on his. He bolted. Vanessa ran after him to the porch. Jared, wait. The SUV tore out of the driveway, tires squealing, taillights vanishing into the dark. I stood in the center of the living room, arms folded, just as the red and blue glow of patrol cars spilled across the front windows. Vanessa turned slowly, face pale, eyes wide, robe clutched tight at the collar. I didn't move, didn't speak. I just waited. The doorbell rang. Sirens silenced. And suddenly, she didn't look like a queen anymore. She looked like a woman who'd just realized she'd invited the law into a chess match she didn't understand. Two officers stepped into the foyer, one older, built like a retired linebacker, the other young and still scanning everything like it was his first month on the job. Their boots echoed on the hardwood as they took in the scene. Me, calm and composed. Vanessa, breathless in silk and chaos. Vanessa surged forward, pointing at me like I'd crawled in through the chimney. That's him. He broke in. I told dispatch. He has no right to be here. The younger officer looked to his partner. The senior one, Officer Delgado, his badge glinted under the hallway light, kept his face unreadable. Sir, Delgado said, nodding at me. You want to tell me what happened tonight? I used my key, I said evenly. To my house. Walked in. Found an unfamiliar man half-dressed in my living room. Then the police showed up. Vanessa made a scoffing sound. He's lying. I changed the locks after he walked out. He doesn't live here anymore. Delgado raised a hand. Ma'am, we'll sort that out. Just a moment. He stepped back and spoke into the radio clipped to his vest. Dispatch, run residential registration for 1846, Willow Ridge Lane. Name, Adam Linton. There was a pause, static hissing softly. Then, affirmative, Adam Linton is listed as a legal co-owner and resident. No active restraining order. No revocation filed. Delgado glanced at me, then turned back to Vanessa. Well, he said mildly, looks like Mr. Linton's still on the lease indeed. Which means, legally, he can enter this home anytime he wants. Lock or not. Vanessa's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. That can't be right. He left. He's been sleeping next door with, ma'am. Delgado cut in, patient but firm. Cohabitation status doesn't change ownership. Unless there's a court order, he's still allowed here. Technically, he could break the door down, and it still wouldn't be illegal. The younger cop let out a low whistle before quickly coughing to cover it. But he doesn't even live here anymore. Vanessa's voice cracked under the weight of her own unraveling logic. He's been gone for 2 nights. I finally spoke, letting a slow smile curl the edge of my mouth. I was just here to grab my toothbrush. Both officers turned toward me. Delgado lifted an eyebrow. Seriously? I nodded. Didn't think it'd turn into a search party. Vanessa was frozen, her hands still in the air, like she couldn't decide whether to point again or just let it fall. Delgado sighed, rubbing his temple. All right. No crime's been committed. Mr. Linton, you're within your rights. If you two have ongoing issues, I strongly suggest handling it through the courts. Already in progress, I said smoothly. The younger officer looked around. You good now? Yeah, I said, reaching into the drawer beside the entryway and grabbing my toothbrush. I'm good. I turned, walked to the door. Vanessa's voice followed me, sharp but cracking. You think this is funny? I paused on the porch, glanced back at her. No, I said. I think it's over. Then I stepped into the night. Lexi's porch light was still on. She was leaning on the railing, barefoot again, sipping tea this time. Well? She asked as I walked across the lawn. I held up the toothbrush. Mission accomplished. She laughed, shaking her head. You are a savage. No, I said, stepping onto her porch. Just done pretending I'm not playing the game she started. Morning came soft and golden, painting streaks of light across Lexi's porch like nature was trying to clean the slate for me. Birds chirped in the distance, and somewhere a lawnmower hummed to life. It was the kind of morning that used to slip past me unnoticed. But not today. Lexi handed me a steaming mug and sat down across from me, tucking one leg under the other. I don't usually let strays hang around 2 nights in a row, she said, smirking over the rim of her coffee. I'm a classy stray, I muttered, sipping. She waited a beat. You sleep at all? Not much, but I feel awake. I set the mug down on the table between us. I think I finally see it for what it is. This marriage, it's not a partnership. It's a performance. And I've been the stagehand this whole time. Lexi didn't reply right away, just nodded slowly, letting the silence breathe. I spent years giving, I said. Buying the right homes, showing up to the right dinners, agreeing to the right optics. Meanwhile, she's been tallying points like I was in debt the moment we said I do. So what now? She asked gently. I take back what's mine, I said. All of it. My name. My balance. My time. Lexi leaned back, eyes narrowing slightly. This revenge. I shook my head. No. It's clarity. That word settled between us like a closing door. By 11 a.m., I was sitting across from my lawyer again. He raised his eyebrows when I handed him the file. Already made your mind up? It was made for me the moment she changed the locks. He flipped through the trust paperwork, nodded approvingly. Smart. She'll think she's walking out with half. But this house? Untouchable. I'm not interested in punishing her, I said, voice level. But I'm done being punished by staying. The lawyer gave me a look. We'll file today. Do you want to serve her in person, or, no? I cut in. Let her get the knock at noon. I'll be in a meeting. An hour later, I sat with a financial advisor I hadn't spoken to in 2 years. A man named Carl, efficient, discreet, and the kind of person who never blinked when someone said divorce. We'll move your non-marital assets into separate holdings, Carl said, clicking away at a laptop. We'll also remove Vanessa's name from any joint accounts immediately. You'll want to create a freeze on credit inquiries as well, just in case. Done, I said. He gave me a long look. You're taking this like a business deal. It is one, I replied. Just happens to involve a broken vow instead of a breached contract. He didn't argue. By the time I walked out of Carl's office, the air smelled like fresh-cut grass and warm pavement. Familiar, unassuming. But to me, it was the scent of something beginning. Not dramatic. Not emotional. Just different. I drove with the windows down. Not to feel free, but to remind myself that I still was. No one was watching anymore. No one was controlling the lighting. No one was scripting the scene. This wasn't her show. Not anymore. It was mine. I didn't knock. Didn't text ahead. Didn't ask if she was ready to talk. I just walked in. It was still my house. On paper, in contract, in every way that mattered. The place smelled like a mix of citrus cleaner and expensive perfume, a scent Vanessa wore only when she expected to win. She was perched at the kitchen island, sipping something golden out of a cut crystal glass and scrolling through her phone. A candle flickered nearby. She didn't look up. You're back, she said flatly. I am. She finally set her phone down, eyes scanning me like she was trying to guess what version of me had walked through the door this time. I pulled out a chair and sat across from her, hands folded, calm. I wanted to tell you this in person, I said. The divorce papers have been filed. You'll be served officially tomorrow. Her expression didn't change. In fact, she laughed. A light, almost musical chuckle. Oh, she said, swirling her drink. Finally. I was wondering how long you'd sulk before making it formal. I'm not sulking, I replied. I'm done. Vanessa leaned back in her chair, legs crossed, perfectly posed like she was shooting a campaign for triumphant ex-wives. Well, at least now I don't have to pretend I'm not already planning my exit. I've spoken to a lawyer. Half the house, half the investments, spousal support. I'm not walking away empty-handed, Adam. You know that, right? She smiled like someone who'd practiced it in the mirror. I let the silence sit for just a moment. Then I reached into my jacket and slid a copy of the property documents onto the table. Folded neatly. Signed. Her smile faltered just a little. What's this? The house, I said, meeting her eyes. It doesn't belong to me. Not legally. Never has. She blinked. Laughed again, but now it was thinner. What are you talking about? It's in a trust, I said. Owned by Kayla. My sister. You're joking. I didn't blink. No. Vanessa reached for the papers like they might burn her. Her eyes moved faster and faster, until they hit the line with Kayla's name listed as trustee and sole legal owner. Her hand froze. I watched the shift. The micro-expression, barely visible, but loud to me. The flutter of her eyelids. The falter of breath. A slight pinch at the corner of her lips. I knew that look. It was the moment she realized the script had changed and she didn't know her next line. That's not fair, she said, voice lower now, barely above a whisper. It's legal. But, I thought, she stopped herself. You moved us in. You paid for it. I did. And you told me this was ours. No, I said. I said it was a fresh start. But even fresh starts need structure. Her hands clenched around the edge of the island. This is manipulation. No, I replied, tone flat. Manipulation was locking me out and inviting another man into my house. This is a boundary. She stood suddenly, her chair scraping across the floor. So what? I walk away with nothing. You walk away with what's yours, I said. And no more than that. You bastard, she hissed. I tilted my head. Funny. You weren't saying that when you changed the locks. She opened her mouth, then closed it. The silence in that room could have cracked concrete. I could still fight this, she said weakly. You can try, but trust law's airtight. My lawyer's ready for every angle. Her eyes filled, not with tears, but with fury. I gave you the best years of my life. And you spent them comparing me to your friends, I said, standing now. To their cars, their jewelry, their square footage. You never wanted a husband. You wanted a prop. You think you're the good guy now, she spat. You think this makes you noble? No, I said softly. It makes me free. I picked up the papers, slid them back into my coat, and walked to the door. Behind me, I heard her slump back into the chair. No more comebacks. No more control. Just a woman left alone in a house she never really owned, staring down the wreckage of the narrative she built. Outside, the air felt lighter. No applause. No grand music playing. Just me, stepping off a stage I never agreed to be on. The courtroom smelled like coffee, printer ink, and expensive disappointment. Vanessa sat 2 chairs away, dressed in a muted gray dress that tried too hard to say sympathetic victim. Her lawyer, a young guy with too much gel in his hair and not enough control over his briefcase, whispered urgently into her ear. I didn't need to hear him to know what he was saying. There's no way around this. Across the aisle, my lawyer sat calm, hands folded, no notes needed. We'd already rehearsed this. There were no surprises. The judge adjusted his glasses and tapped the folder on his desk. The court acknowledges receipt of all asset documentation, including the trust established under the name Kayla Linton. Vanessa's lawyer stood, clearing his throat. Your Honor, if I may, my client contends that while the property is technically under a trust, it was clearly purchased as a marital home, and the judge held up a hand. Counselor, the law doesn't deal in intention. It deals in ownership. And legally, the property in question belongs to a third party. Your client has no claim. Vanessa sat stiff as marble, lips pressed into a thin line. Her eyes darted to me like she was still waiting for me to change my mind. Like maybe I'd stand up and say, just kidding. But I didn't move. The judge continued. Given the prenuptial agreement regarding your business assets and the clean documentation of separate property, there are no significant marital assets to divide. Mrs. Linton will retain her personal vehicle and any items purchased with her own income. Her lawyer slumped slightly. Vanessa didn't blink. Divorce is granted. Final papers will be signed before the end of this session. I leaned forward and picked up the pen. No flourish. No hesitation. Just one clean signature. Done. Vanessa stood abruptly and walked out before the session was officially closed. Her heels echoed down the hallway, each click quieter than the last. I didn't watch her leave. My lawyer offered a nod. That's it. And just like that, it was. No parade. No bloodbath. No victory speech. Just a quiet, clinical conclusion to a war that never should have started. I stepped outside into the California sun and breathed. Really breathed. The kind of breath you don't know you've been holding for years. It had been 4 days since the courthouse. 4 days since I signed away a name that no longer meant anything between us. Since I walked out without looking back. And somehow, the quiet had become comfortable. No more waiting for a voice to raise. No walking on eggshells made of compliments and comparisons. Just silence. And space. That evening, the sky was turning a lazy shade of lavender as I stood on Lexi's porch, a white bakery box in one hand. She opened the door in cut-off jeans and an oversized t-shirt that said I run on caffeine and boundary issues. Her eyes fell on the box. You brought offerings? She said with a raised brow. Peace offerings, I replied. Cupcakes. From that place you said was overrated but finished 2 in one sitting. Lexi grinned and stepped aside. Well, I never turn away baked goods or men who know how to make an exit. I followed her in. The house smelled like rosemary and something just a little citrusy. She set the cupcakes on the counter, grabbed 2 glasses, and uncorked a bottle without asking. Red okay. I'm not picky anymore. She poured and handed me a glass, her eyes scanning me slowly. Not like Vanessa did. Measuring, calculating, but like someone trying to read the story behind the stillness. You look 10 pounds lighter, she said softly. I gave a dry chuckle, all in paperwork and pride. Well, she said, raising her glass, to whatever the hell comes next. I didn't toast immediately, just stared at the wine for a second, then looked up at her. Lexi leaned back against the counter, still holding her glass. You don't have to be anything here, Adam. Not the guy who has the answers, not the one who gets it right. Just be. That sentence hung in the air longer than anything either of us had said all week. I finally raised my glass, clinked it gently against hers. To being. She smiled. Not bad for a businessman. We sat out on her porch as the sun disappeared, the neighborhood lights flickering on like stars that forgot the sky. She told me about the screenplay she once sold and how she walked away from Hollywood after watching one too many people sell their soul for a better agent. I told her about the first warehouse I bought when I was 28, how I slept on a cot in the back office for 6 months to keep the business alive. There was laughter, a pause, another sip, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like a man defending his life. I felt like one who was finally living it. And that was the end of my story. Vanessa changed the locks and invited another man into our home while we were still married, said it was her house now. I handled it without shouting, without slamming doors. But let me ask you, did she do the right thing? Or have you seen someone do something like that before? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if this story got you thinking, hit that like button and subscribe for more.